What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? I would like to welcome you all to another edition of Wayne's Perspective, where we operate in discipline, decency, integrity, and respect. I'm coming to you today with another political thoughts video, session three. This may be a short video because I only have one article today, courtesy of the Washington Post. It's about some recent happenings that took place in my state of Virginia this week. And it'll be my first time actually reading this particular article. I did come across it when it was released, and I saved it, with the intention of doing this particular video. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here, and we're gonna go ahead and get to this particular video. And before I get to that, I hope everyone is doing okay as we head into the weekend. Things on my end are pretty good, just working real hard and taking every day one day at a time. So again, I hope everyone is doing okay. So without further delay, let me go ahead and get my screen shared, and we're gonna go ahead and get into this article courtesy of the not the Richmond Times Dispatch today, but the Washington Post. Credit to Gregory S. Schneider and Laura Vazelia, and we're gonna go ahead and get right into it.
This news story was written by Gregory S. Schneider and Laura Vozella. Youngkin, Virginia lawmakers agree to seek new state budget, avert crisis. Richmond. Virginia lawmakers and Governor Glenn Youngkin have reached a deal aimed at averting a nasty confrontation over the state budget, agreeing to set aside the current spending plan and work toward a new budget document by the middle of next month.
Okay, so allow me to stop it early. Now, that's a good thing. The last thing I would want to see in my state is government shutdown. It's already worse when we get a federal shutdown, but it may hit a little differently when it's actually hitting your state. So again, this is a good thing here, but we're going to continue on.
The deal leaves a lot of ground to cover in settling tax and spending policy, but marks a profound improvement in adversarial relations between Democratic lawmakers and the Republican governor that had the state lurching toward a possible government shutdown.
Okay, now again, like I've said in previous videos talking about my state, I probably wouldn't agree with Governor Youngkin on much, but when there's common ground that can be had with people that you may disagree with a lot, but if there could be common ground and common sense, and you can have what results in a common sense discussion or a general discussion without having things turn into a shouting match or whatever. When you can have things like this, even across the aisle, that's a good thing. Like I said, I'm a Democrat, okay? So, if I'm working with a Republican governor, or let's just say when I'm in the House of Representatives, if the Republicans are in charge when I get there, and hopefully they're not, it's always good to find common ground and common sense solutions on behalf of the constituents that you've been elected to work for. So in this case, hey, I was happy to see the Democrats regain full control in the Virginia House and the Virginia Senate. So this part of the article right here marking a profound improvement in adversarial relations between the Democratic lawmakers and the Republican governor. That's a good thing. So, much props on this. And again, if it can prevent a government shutdown in our state, I'm all for it. Let's
Came
continue.
together over the last few days, worked well together in order to agree to this, Youngkin told reporters Wednesday in the state capitol as he stood with leading Democratic and Republican lawmakers, including Senator L. Louise Lucas, D. Portsmouth, who has routinely taunted Youngkin on social media and led the crusade to kill his plans for a $2 billion sports arena in Alexandria. What changed? We spent time together, Youngkin said. A lot of time together, Lucas added. There are no specific policy choices nailed down yet. It's basically an agreement to reach agreement.
And that's where it starts right there. Basically an agreement to reach agreement. So again, I like that.
But the first step played out Wednesday on the floor of the House of Delegates, with lawmakers in town for the annual session to review vetoes and amendments proposed by the governor. After leaders explained to the members what was going on in closed-door caucus meetings, the House voted unanimously to set aside all of Youngkin's 233 proposed amendments to the budget. Then lawmakers procedurally killed the underlying document. the General Assembly's own budget. While that would seem to leave the state in even worse limbo, lawmakers and the governor have agreed to work to fashion a new 2-year spending plan based on the General Assembly's budget, but taking Youngkin's priorities into account. Minority Leader Todd Gilbert, R. Shenandoah, urged his caucus to support the move, not because he agreed with it in substance, but because it was part of the new détente on the budget. Hopefully, we may have entered into a phase where finally we can all sit down and the governor and the leaders of the budget committees, and you, Mr. Speaker, can work this out, Gilbert told House Speaker Don L. Scott Jr., D. Portsmouth.
Okay, and just by listening to this, the United States House of Representatives can actually take a cue from the House of Delegates in my state regarding how to conduct business for the people. Again, even though these are two sides, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to agree on much, but when you can have this level of this level of compromise and working things out and all of that, you can reach some common ground here. I mean, it's not that hard. That's part of what politics is. No two people or no two sides are going to agree on everything, but you come together for your constituents. I mean, it's not that hard.
Budget negotiators aim to submit a new budget in a special legislative session, May 13th, returning 2 days later to vote on it. We have not settled out on a lot of the specifics. That's what the work to do over the course of the next 30 days will be, Youngkin told reporters. Although the budget was quickly dispensed with, legislators on Wednesday still had to slog through Youngkin's amendments to 116 bills and vetoes of 153. Neither chamber mustered the 2/3 supermajority needed to override any of the vetoes, including one that nixed a bipartisan 1% local sales tax to fund school construction. The House and Senate rejected many of his amendments, but Youngkin will have the final say, signing or vetoing the bills.
That's important, in terms of what the governor's role here is and what the House and the Senate role is. That's important.
By a 34-6 vote, the Senate soundly rejected Youngkin's rewrite of a bill to allow slot machine-like skill games in convenience stores.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that's pretty interesting here. And there is a article on the Richmond Times-Dispatch website, but I decided not to do that because even though the content will be different in terms of the words and who wrote it, it'll basically be like me doing similar articles, even though they may be different in content. So that's why I just chose this one. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised at the rejection of it, but I kind of seen this coming based on what I talked about in my previous video.
That leaves the governor the choice of vetoing the bill or allowing it to become law in its original form, and keeps the issue alive as a potential bargaining chip in budget negotiations. During his impromptu news conference in the Capitol on Wednesday, Youngkin praised and thanked his colleagues in the General Assembly, a marked change in tone from the backward budget tour Youngkin embarked upon shortly after the legislature wrapped up work on the budget March 9th. Speaking to friendly Republican audiences, Youngkin had traveled the state slamming Democrats for reaching into taxpayers' pockets to fund their pet projects.
And I'll say this again, going back to the slot machine-like skill games. Now, again, like I said in my other video talking about this, I do support these skill games in convenience stores, because, the stores could use some additional funding, if you will. Well, not necessarily funding, but another line of income. What's the word? It's another way to describe it. It's not coming to me right now. I apologize for that. But I'm in support of this, because it'll give another lifeline to the store owners, as long as there's, some level of surveillance, 24 hours. Even if you, and basically I said surveillance, if you can't have a security guard on staff or on call for the duration of the hours of the convenience stores, but, surveillance, that'll help, making sure that it's only adults on those machines, don't have anyone, I would say anyone under 21 doing that, because that's going to cause a problem in itself. But like I said, I do support having these types of games in convenience stores. There's nothing wrong with allowing, some additional revenue. I think that's what I was trying to say earlier. Have some additional revenue going towards the stores, to assist the owners and things like that. So I'm all for it.
Though Democrats control both chambers of the General Assembly, the budget had been passed with significant Republican support. It rejected Youngkin's call for cuts to personal income tax rates, but accepted his plan to expand the sales tax to digital downloads,
I do agree with that.
then took that a step further by applying it to digital purchases made by businesses as well as consumers, which he opposed.
I do agree with applying it to digital purchases in that instance as well when it comes to businesses.
The legislature's budget also featured 3% pay raises for teachers and state employees each of the next 2 years, along with big increases in funding for higher education and public K-12 schools.
Okay, big increases in funding for higher education and public K through 12 schools. Yes, I highly support that. Anytime there's significant increases when it comes to education on any end, I support that. And of course, what teachers deserve a pay raise across the board. So the fact that it's happening in my state, of course, I agree with that. And the state employees, yes, the state employees have a lot of essential duties. So yes, if they can get a pay raise, even in this case, 3%, I would prefer a much higher percentage, but that's neither here nor there right now. But anytime the teachers can get a pay raise and the employees of the state can get a pay raise, I support that as well.
On April 8th, Youngkin rolled out an unusually detailed rewrite of that budget with his 233 amendments, killing the digital tax, but shuffling funding to include pay raises and some other legislative priorities. Democrats reacted angrily, and expectations rose that if they rejected the amendments, Youngkin would become the first Virginia governor in modern memory to veto an entire budget.
Which would not look good. Let me tell you, it wouldn't look good if it was a Democratic governor, but hey, that would not look good, Mr. Youngkin.
With compromise seeming out of reach, the state would have faced a first-ever government shutdown if no budget was in place by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th.
And that also would not look good either. No self-respecting governor of any party, in this case with my state, would want to be the first overseeing a first ever government shutdown. No one wants to see that. So again, I'm all for any type of compromise and legislation and any kind of deals that could be reached to prevent that.
Then, this week, the tone suddenly changed. On Monday, Senate Minority Leader Ryan T. McDougal, R. Hanover, and Lucas sat down for lunch in a little room in the General Assembly building, a meeting they'd set up days earlier in a phone call. They'd been bemoaning the budget impasse and decided FaceTime would be the best fix. "We said, we really just need to sit down and have a conversation," McDougal recalled Wednesday. Over boxed lunches from the building's cafeteria, the two decided the next step should be expanding the circle. "We talked about how we need to get everybody to the table. We need to get R's and D's and the governor sitting at the table, all talking at the same time and not talking past each other or through our different caucuses," Lucas said.
And I agree with that.
"And so we got together and said, well, we're going to get some folks from the House, some folks from the Senate, from both sides. We're going to sit down and have a conversation."
And see, it's crazy that our House of Representatives can't be this cooperative. I mean, it's crazy, whereas in the House of Representatives, the United States House of Representatives, the Democrats are ready to work and willing to work, and the Republicans don't want to do anything. They don't want to talk to anyone but themselves, and they barely want to even talk to themselves considering everything that's going on with their party right now. But I digress.
That group gathered in the General Assembly building the next day, pairs of budget and party leaders from each chamber. "Like Noah's Ark," McDougal said, 2 from each side. Among them was House Appropriations Committee Chairman Luke E. Torian, D. Prince William, who shared that he was going to have a meeting with the governor in the same building later that afternoon. "And then we all just decided, well, let's go to that meeting," McDougal said. He and Torian went down first to make sure Youngkin didn't mind others coming along, and when he gave the okay, everyone else walked in. Lucas laughed at the memory of the group descending on the governor. "I don't know if he expected there to be so many of us," she said. "But he invited us to the meeting and we just kept trickling in the door, and so the conversation started." Events happened so quickly, they caught Scott off guard. The House Speaker had briefed a group of reporters Tuesday afternoon on the budget impasse, blaming Youngkin for failing to engage despite the fact that the two men have developed an unlikely friendship.
And it is unlikely, let me tell you, based on everything I've read.
Soon after, he said, his phone began blowing up with texts from the governor and lawmakers urging him to come down to the meeting. He summoned the reporters back on Wednesday morning to tell them everything had changed. Scott described a late-breaking sense of clarity on all sides, a realization that steaming toward a budget veto from the governor and possible government shutdown would hurt all of their constituents.
Right.
New York bond rating agencies had told him the state's lofty credit status was at risk, he said, which would mean higher borrowing costs for state government, passed along to taxpayers. During the meeting with Youngkin, he said, the dilemma was clear. Should members use Wednesday's session for performances of partisan political speeches and then produce a budget that Youngkin was all but certain to veto? Or do we use this day to take the temperature down and try to be constructive and do a reset, said Scott, who just Tuesday released a digital ad criticizing Pretending Glenn for his budget changes. We decided that we needed to take the temperature down a little bit, Scott said. Youngkin ventured over to the General Assembly building again Wednesday morning to work out procedural strategy with lawmakers, meeting on their turf in what Scott took as a sign of respect. There was no attempt, though, to settle the actual substantive issues of the budget. We agreed that there's nothing that's off the table, said Torian, the House budget chief. Everything will be up for discussion and deliberations. No decisions have been made at this point. Everything that we had in our budget that we sent to the governor, all of it is still on the table for discussion and deliberation. Scott promised that big spending priorities such as pay raises, higher education, and healthcare will still be funded. The digital sales tax? At some point, he said, that has to pass for Virginia to keep up with surrounding states that have already implemented one. But if Youngkin wants to insist on preventing it, that's on him, Scott said. Meanwhile, an expected revenue surplus of anywhere from $400 million to $1 billion could help make up the difference. We're in a better, more mature place on the budget, Scott said.
It's a nice surplus.
I think everybody understands their roles and responsibilities a little better. I'll put it like that. I think there's an opportunity to get this thing done. A previous version of this article.
Okay, we can stop it right there. So again, credit to the House, credit to the Senate, credit to everyone involved, and again, credit to Glenn Youngkin and everyone for preventing what would have been the first time ever government shutdown in the state of Virginia. So that's the end of this article right here. I'm very interested to see where this is going to go, and of course, I'm going to keep a track on it and check everything out, see how everything goes, and I'll be back with another video to talk about it. And in between, if there's something notable that's going on with my state, best believe I'll be on my channel to talk about it. So overall, that's going to do it for this particular video. If you're in the state of Virginia, specifically the 804 area, let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on, the prevention of a first ever government shutdown, the collaboration between Governor Youngkin and the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats and everybody else involved. Let me know what you think about the skill games and where you stand on that as well. And we'll go from there. So like I've said before, if you're ready to become a member of Team Discipline, go ahead and like the video, share it, comment, subscribe, and all of that. And until next time, everyone, take care. And remember, the power of the mind is valuable.